Hi, and welcome to Amplifiz podcast, the podcast that helps you and your team maximize your potential. I'm excited to talk about how the pharma sector is reimagining customer experience. To talk about this, I have two esteemed guest speakers with a combined experience in the pharma industry of nearly 5 decades. Congratulations, gentlemen. And welcome to both of you, Glenn and Sushil. How are you?
Very well. Happy to be here. Thanks.
Thank you so much. So before we get going, we'll probably paint the landscape of the pharma sector briefly. The pharma industry is $1.6 trillion of revenue in 2023, out of which roughly 10% of this is for OTC medicines, so over-the-counter medicines, medicines that do not require medical prescription. The rest, 90% or so, is for prescription medicine. The industry has been growing fast and steadily over the last 2 decades, and yet something seems to be broken in a traditional pharma go-to-market model, engagement model. Can you tell us why the pharma is going towards omni-channel in the last 2 decades?
There's a few things happening here. We've been trying to get closer to customers and more broaden our go-to-market from the traditional personal sales-driven model, which has been so successful, as you say, for pharma for many, many decades. And I think a couple of years ago, the pandemic was a very acute insult to the industry, if you like. And that really forced an acceleration of particularly many digital engagement channels. But I think more than that, I see two broad trends in the last 3 to 5 years that are really driving that beyond digital to a more customer-centric experience. And one is a genuine desire in the industry to get closer to their customers and better engage them more effectively and more efficiently. So that's one piece. And then related to this, I think most companies now recognize they play a bigger role in the healthcare ecosystem than simply as purveyors of drugs, if you like. And therefore, our old commercial model of pushing out messages about the efficacy of products is no longer fit for purpose. So there's a piece around addressing more holistically the role that pharma industry plays within that whole ecosystem, how we better help our customers, HCPs specifically, deliver better outcomes for patients. And I think those two trends are really, as I see it, what's driving this real, genuine desire to change the go-to-market model.
It's a combination of multiple push and pull factors. When you're looking at the pull factors, as Glenn rightly mentioned, you're looking at a desire by the healthcare industry to create even a better impact to the patients. And at the same time, if you're looking at it, the biggest part is the technology. Technology enables that part that, previously I could reach out as a medical rep to 10 customers, 20, 50, 100 customers. Today, with a push of a button, I'm able to reach out to thousands or millions of those ones. At the same time, having an ability to customize that message to what matters to you, what will address your drivers and barriers. So I think this is a very important time in our industry, which is enabled by the technology. And at the same time, when we're saying technology, it is not just the omni-channel aspect. It is an overall impact. On one hand, because of technology, R&D is able to create newer and more better medicines. Supply chain is able to go to even deeper pockets where the medicine access was not possible. And as we say that doctors or our entire ecosystem is made up of human beings, their habits are also being shaped by the era in which we are living in. So combination of all these things, plus now you include governments wants to also talk about the public health. There are pricing pressures. There are the earning pressures from the shareholders. So I think combination of all of this is shaping today's environment into these specific areas.
Very interesting. And when you guys talk about bringing more value to the customers and go beyond this promotional thing, what are the kind of values that are expected nowadays? Because when you talk about customer centricity, and to your point around pull and push, it's really a matter of saying now the customer is in charge and he's going to dictate to us providers the kind of experience that and the kind of content he needs from us, and how can we help him perform better as a professional. So how is the industry seeing this, and you guys from experience, what are the elements that you see have shifted from this product-centric logic to something more tailored to the customer needs?
So I'll start. I mean, I will talk first about the trust. At the end of the day, let's not forget versus any other industry,
Right.
this industry deals with something very basic to humanity, that is your well-being. And you are producing products which goes inside your body. So somebody to whom you are telling that my product is going to address the well-being need of your patient, the trust needs to be there. It's intrinsic. It has always been there, but in today's time, even more so, because the number of players, the sheer intensity of number of players coming from different parts of the world, this is really very important to a lot of people. The second aspect I would say is integration of different systems. When Glenn and you were mentioning, we are not talking about an individual customer or a consumer. It's a very robust ecosystem where you have doctors, you have paramedics, you have patients, you have pharmacists, the entire system, you have distributors. All of them have their own needs. So if you are able to fulfill those needs, then only you would fulfill your mission of making a difference to the patient, I feel.
And picking up on exactly that point that Sushil's made, that's part of what I was alluding to, talking about the broader role within the health ecosystem. Because all of the different components or parts of that system they know what they need. They don't always know what else is required. So whether it could be distributors or patients, that's probably the best example of where I think we as companies play a big role, helping healthcare professionals understand what the patient needs are, not just at the point of diagnosis or treatment, but also post that. We all talk about persistence rates and drop-off or not fulfilling of prescriptions. That's all data that the systems integration that Sushil's talking about, we now see that we never saw before. And that's important not just because we know this and we can create strategies around it, it's important because we can then inform the broader ecosystem. Right. And that all ultimately builds to better patient outcomes. But it also enables us to intervene at different points. So not just at the HCP interface, but allowing them to see the value that is brought, not just to them, but to other elements in that broader system that are required.
Yeah. And when you look at the industry as a whole, not to ask you guys to refer to your personal company or experience, but generally speaking, looking at the overall industry, do you see the pharma sector to now be very customer-centric and being able to have content that will resonate with patients and with these other persona and stakeholders you talk about, or you feel that we are pretty much at the early stage of that journey? I mean, what's your diagnostic of this?
So I would say intent is there, and I could say this for not just one of the companies. So not just one of the companies. See, I think I've been fortunate to work for multiple employers, and also not just in pharma, vaccines, medical devices, all of them. What I've seen is there is no dearth of an intent. What really matters is how are we acting on it. First part is, do we have enough insights? Do we have a proper data that will pinpoint us to actually the problem that we are solving? The second issue is the intent. When you're working in an organization, different teams, functions have different intents. Some are focused on, say, maximizing the value. Some are more interested in ensuring that the bottom lines are robust, and rightly so. Everybody has got a function to do that part. But while this is happening, at the end of the day, are we creating the content? Are we creating that specific content that addresses customer A versus customer B? Is he or she finally seeing that, yes, he or my organization from whom I'm getting this content knows me and actually addressing my issues? Because if you don't do that, then you will end up sounding very commercial, and then at some point we all know what we do when somebody is knocking our door all the time and buy my product. Either you switch off or you push back, or you're like, okay, just one amongst the other ones. And the risk then therefore is not just that you will be just one amongst all those other companies, but at the end you are somewhere not fulfilling your mission of making that impact.
Yeah.
And I think, again, picking up on Sushil's point, which is very well made, the intent, I think, is shared across all levels of any organisation. Where we differ and where I think we sometimes trip ourselves up is the steps on how to get there, and which is the most critical or urgent. We talk about systems and infrastructure, and all of those are important because we, like many multinationals, are large organisations, lots of legacy, redundant systems. So getting them to talk to each other and getting all that data and connectivity that we require, it's a challenge, but it's also the easiest challenge to articulate. The people capabilities and the business processes behind are much harder to tackle because we've built up infrastructure, we've built up roles and responsibilities in organisations, often as workarounds or ways of addressing internal challenges and barriers. So when we start to look at recrafting those to be more customer-centric, to be quicker to create that personalised content, which we're very bad at in general, we have to stop doing a lot of things. We have to really fundamentally look at how we work internally. And again, the intent and the acknowledgement of that, I think, is almost universal.
Yeah.
What we do first, what's the step number 1 versus step number 10 or 15? That's where the discussions, where sometimes some of the log jams, I think, happen within organisations.
And in fact, if I may add one more point, this is my favorite paradigm. Any problem that we are trying to solve related to content or patient needs, I look at it as there are, say, 4 pillars: insight, strategy, execution, and measurability, or KPIs. And to come up with a content that will resonate with the customer needs, you probably need to have clicked on all these 4 boxes.
Right.
So the question, again, going back, Glenn, to what you're saying, intent has to do with overall 4 pillars. Let's start with the first one. Do we have enough data? Do we have the right data with which we will get the right insights? Once we have it, then do we have strategic capabilities to pinpoint that specific issue, the root cause of the problem, or we are being very superficial and talking about something that is very coming from a very inside out view and not an outside in view. The third part is the execution. Many war generals have said that a B class strategy executed in a class way versus an A class strategy executed in a B class way, there would always be a difference. And then the last part is versus many other industries, what I've seen is measurability. Everybody's perception is very, very different. I think at the end of the day, it is not just about the number of prescriptions or the number of boxes that you have sold. One, are we fulfilling the value? Are we fulfilling the needs of our shareholders? Is our EBITDA improving? Is our profit improving? Most importantly, more than that, how many patients we are changing their life? Do we build all these things into our content strategy is a question, right?
Right.
One of the things I've observed over many years, any metric that becomes the metric du jour or the flavour of the week or the month becomes a KPI very quickly, and then we manage by dashboard. And there's a positive element to that, or a positive intent perhaps, but we very quickly devolve into a stoplight mentality. Every general manager or senior leader in the organisation wants their KPIs to be green. So the focus is on the KPI, not on actually what they're trying to move. And there again, that what's important becomes critical. And there's a little bit of a capability and knowledge gap. I remember not too long ago having conversations internally in companies about what email metrics to use for effective. There's open rates, read rates, click-through rates, etc. And when I talk about this to those who've worked in digital marketing for much longer, they look at me like, why are you even arguing this? This is such a no-brainer. This has been tackled and solved. There's standards here.
Right.
But within pharma, we're constantly looking for a KPI that we can track, and open rate's easier, or I can see the visibility on that. Click-through is so much lower. I'm looking at really minuscule improvements. That doesn't reflect well on me. It's a more effective measure of the impact of your campaign or the content delivery.
Yeah.
But it's a harder one to then say, hey, look at me, I've got a nice green light on this metric. So one of the biggest challenges, I'd be interested in your perspective on this, is getting different parts of the organisation away from, whether it's sales or shareholder value, these internally focused metrics, to piecemeal metrics. So metrics that move the needle from one step in the patient journey or the customer journey to the next. Forget about the ultimate could be 10 steps, 2 steps, 15 steps away. But your role, or my role in this, is to move this to here. I don't want to red flag it or green flag it or whatever. It's just, are we moving in a positive direction? And then the next part of that step or that journey is that moving in a positive direction. Because all of that then cascades.
Yep.
But every function has their own little siloed view, and it's very hard to sometimes accept that if we're working cross-functionally, truly in the interest of customer, then all of those steps collectively matter, not just your green light on your particular KPI.
Right. Absolutely. In fact, I would say this, sometimes there is such a high risk of falling a victim or becoming a slave of your dashboard that you end up thinking, oh, last month I did 5,000 emails. This month I need to grow them by 10%. So 5,500 emails. This is a great part.
And I think, to continue on this theme, is that it's so difficult to create valuable content. And when you want to do it across channel, it's a challenge for a lot of organizations, because suddenly you don't create one asset, but you need to create 15 different versions of it. So it's usually quite hard to create a nugget that really brings value. And subsequently, when you are always chasing a number, you are usually seeing the quality going down, which impacts the open rate anyway.
Is your content affecting 3 parts of your body? One is your eyes, that is where you are consuming the content. Is it pleasing? Is it aesthetically right? Is it compliant to what your law of the land says? Second part is the brain. Is it something that you're just looking and saying, wow, such a beautiful ad, and then forgetting about it? Or are you really internalizing the key message that you have for that part? And then the third organ is hand. For a content, the way I would be able to measure is, am I able to put that in my action? Am I able to identify a patient walking into my clinic and say, hey, this content, the message of that content is applicable to this eligible patient and for whom I need to take a right action. So if the content is not applicable to these 3 areas, eyes, brain and hand, then it is probably just I'm doing a self-service, I feel.
And again, we're still talking very much about an inside-out focus, right? A push focus. Yeah. We haven't even then touched on the other element, which to me is the important differentiator between the whole omni-channel, multi-channel, omni-channel journey that we've been on, to what I like to talk about, which is more the customer experience, customer centricity, because that is outside in. Right. Like you alluded, Sushil, to kind of the right message at the right time, right? When a patient walks in to their clinic. And the important part of that is often a pull. The physician needs information then. The right rep or email might have been 2 days ago, 2 weeks ago. When they're reaching out or when they're thinking about how do they get information, and it's not from our websites. We know this, in spite of spending lots of man hours, woman hours and money on them. But we need to understand what their needs are and how they're accessing or how they're fulfilling those needs. So that pull part, and that I think we're still very rudimentary. I think we're relatively strong on the push. We can do a lot better, I think, particularly from a customer centricity perspective. But really tackling that pull area, or pull marketing or messaging, is where we're really struggling to make inroads. I think, at least my observation. Yeah. So being there at the right time, with the right channel, with the right content, etc.
Yeah, and we often assume that we know what they want or we do the right thing, but obviously assumption is different than evidence. And so I wonder if you guys, through your experience, I've seen a lot of pharma companies doing a lot of market research.
Today, technology allows you to look at the insights even without bothering your customers at time. While at the same time, there are certain insights that you will not get it if you just mount a commission a market research meeting X number of customers. Right. I think at some point you will have to actually go observe exactly how things work. And the next part is, okay, you receive the insights and something that you kind of hinted towards. Am I having an ability or a humility to accept the insights that are coming out? Like, oh, customer doesn't know anything. I know this is not what they want. The famous Henry Ford part. My customer doesn't know. As long as they're buying the black color car, it's a right color for them. Right. So I think it depends on both these areas. But again, I think we are living in a very awesome era where thanks to technology, we have multiple ways of gathering those insights. Yeah.
I mean, we often say that as an industry, or at least historically, we always felt we were data poor. And I think there's some truth to that in terms of hard data from a commercial perspective, but I think we're information rich. And to Sushil's point, often we don't actually seek within the organisation, what do we know about how customers think or feel about a particular thing. We have entire armies of customer-facing folks out there, whether they're sales reps, MSLs, key account managers, etc. How often do we tap into that? Market research, absolutely, but I think we often default to market research because it's a nice, well-defined kind of strategic way to address a specific question. But it also can be a little bit of a dodge, right? I don't understand what my customers are thinking, so therefore I need something to validate my lack of knowledge or perhaps my lack of insight, because there is a difference also between the inputs and the insights. There's something actionable that you do. It's kind of the why behind what you observe. And I think that's critical. Even something as simple as, you know, I'm a bit of a dinosaur, as you alluded to in the opening. But when I grew up as a marketeer, we would have advisory boards or advisory councils of physicians when we were testing out sales materials, sometimes even pre-launch to test positioning. This was kind of par for the course and standard. That seems to have dropped off in the industry, and there's a whole debate around compliance and how you're engaging HCPs around that to some extent. But I think also asking a customer directly how to better serve their needs is rarely a bad thing.
Yes.
As long as you're bringing that information in, however you're doing that. So it's that direct engagement, which doesn't always get you the right answer either, right? We're all rational and emotional beings, and there's reams of research in the marketing literature around which of those two drives actually makes decisions, and we all know it's largely emotional, right? So it's getting insights or getting those inputs and then deriving insights. Why is this happening in the market? Why are physicians reacting this way? And then, and only then, can you actually act on that. But research is only one part of it. It's one data point that you need to integrate.
And talking about advisory board or the example of co-creating with customers and so on, I mean, if you look at other sectors, some of the most successful tech companies have boards of customers who are literally co-creating and working on the product roadmap with them to make sure that the right feature is coming up and things like that. So I do understand that there are differences here in terms of what we do in pharma, but the point is that, as you said, ironically, it's rarely a mistake to ask the customer what they think. Now, to be controversial, I think it was, maybe I get it wrong, but I think it was Henry Ford quote who said that if you ask your customer what they want, they will probably ask horses that run faster, faster horses than instead of cars. So there's a truth to this, and you talked about this as well, is that sometimes they don't know what they don't know, and so it has to be one component of data and insights that you're going to massage with other elements to come up with what you think is ultimately the most valuable for them. I want to move on to, you talked about the customer-facing role. Sales reps are one of them. As we talk about the evolution of the engagement model of pharma, obviously the reps who have been a key component of this interaction with doctors for decades has gone through their fair share of challenges as well. I remember working for the pharma industry as a provider nearly 10 years ago and meeting some of your peers who were telling me that at the time some of the HCPs interaction were counted in minutes, and in Japan I remember a customer telling me that it was even in seconds. So if the rep had 25 seconds with a HCP in a corridor, that was already something that they would keep track on. So we can wonder what's the actual impact of that, but that's for another day. So talk to me about the HCP, the rep landscape and how it has evolved, and what are these guys going through right now.
So I will say this. I think this is the beauty of our industry, that we have an ability to have that human connection. I don't think, and this is my personal opinion, that a rep's role will ever become redundant, ever. It's a human connection. In fact, we should look at it more like a strength, that versus any other industry within a fraction of a second can become human, can become non-human, while ours, we have that ability. Now, where do you use this superpower of yours depends on, your priorities as an organization. For example, in a couple of my previous organizations, this is what we saw, that there are some molecules or some brands which have been there for 50 years, 60 years. Is there a new science where you can talk about it, or is there a new science that you can teach a doctor or tell a doctor about it? Or would you rather utilize this human voice of yours to talk about something even more exciting? Not that, today you're getting infinite resources where you can put in, all your resources everywhere else. So I think it's a question of where you can utilize these resources or utilize these powers of yours and abilities of yours. Right. Secondly, I would say that, there are reps, their role has changed a lot today. I mean, you're not just talking about somebody who goes mugging up a story and then they just literally read out what is there into a detail aid. Today, they are that human connection. They know a person. They know exactly what time I should enter, who is the receptionist, do I need to talk with this person, on which day they will place an order, on which day I should not go. And all of this intel, sometimes, as an organization may not be with us. It's only with that human being. However, I would say that their role has now shifted, because we need to now ensure that they are upskilled properly, so that they are also taking that decision at that micro level, that if, imagine somewhere in one of the market, you have a nursing home or a small hospital of 5 doctors. As an organization, I don't have an ability yet to customize my strategy for those 5 doctors. Sure. But then this rep who is managing these 5 doctors have that ability. Mm-hmm. And I think that's the biggest superpower that no other industry has versus us. Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Completely agree. They are a critical resource that actually know customers. We talk about customer insights. That's one of the parts of the organization that usually has those in droves. So, but I think one of the things that we grapple with, to me, it's not so much a binary question of, has the rep's role evolved? Unquestionably. But is it evolving to a defined endpoint from the old detail people, right? We used to be called detailers way back in the day, to some other undefined role? Is it the omni-channel orchestrator, the term that was common or a few years ago? I think it's a little bit horses for courses. I think a little bit, if I reflect on going a little broader, in the medtech space, right, a sales rep would often be in theatre, not guiding the surgeon so much as getting feedback from the surgeon on what was working with that particular device, whatever that type of surgery was there, and feeding that back to the organisation. That's a very different role than a traditional pharma rep talking about product features and benefits. Yep. Right? So that's just one illustrative example, and I think moving forward, sometimes those reps might be more what we currently think of as an account manager, which was kind of the role that you were talking about in that clinic with 5 physicians. Mm-hmm. What's their need as an entity, as a healthcare provider, and the individuals within that? That's one role, and I think I see that blurring of roles. There's a few organisations that have tackled this globally. I did a project a few years ago within one part of our organisation back then to say, started from the fundamental question of, how do we know what a customer's needs are? What's keeping them up at night? Now, most reps that I talk to would say, well, that's how I go in. And I would argue, well, yes, you do, but you have a focus of a therapeutic area or a drug category. That lens is what you're engaging that conversation, rather than kind of starting at a higher level and saying, what is it to this important account or institution that is important and critical? And then let's see how I can help you with those strategic objectives, see where they align with what our organisational goals are. And there's a couple of organisations that are tackling that. And part of it is to remove those internal silos. Sales do this, medical do that, account management do this, marketing do that. And yes, we spend a lot of time and effort to try and be more effective cross-functionally, make sure those communication channels are open. However, we still have individual kind of objectives within those silos which get in the way of that.
Yeah.
So trying to remove, because ultimately customers don't care. Whether you're medical, I could be IT talking to,
Sure.
It doesn't matter from a customer standpoint. You are the organisation that or perhaps the drug that I need to use. Help me get to where I need to be, or help me get that patient better outcomes. So trying to eliminate some of those functional roles, at least internally, eliminates or tries to eliminate some of those internal barriers, but it also more directly addresses that customer need. And the skill set or the capability that you bring, that's up to the organisation to then flex to bring that. Not in the very simplistic way of, well, I'm the sales rep, I can't answer that, so let me get my medical colleague. That's a very structured way and a very inefficient way. If we're bringing those resources and those expertise to you as a customer at the time when you need it, those questions, that whole workflow goes away.
Yep.
Because it's there when you need it, irrespective of who's delivering it to you on an individual level.
Yeah. So this logic of account management and being able, as you said, to break the silos and allow these different functions to better work together as a pharma organization in order to better serve hospital ABC or whatever customer. You said that you see this happening in some pharma companies, and to the point we made earlier about the importance of being very relevant with our content from a marketing standpoint, it seems to me like there's a fantastic opportunity for the industry to really have that that sales organization, that revamped sales organization that you describe, or at least customer-facing organization, I don't know how we want to call it, working very closely with the marketing group in order for them to really do almost like what we call in other sectors account-based marketing, which is really a very specific strategy and ways of engaging a given organization. Is it something that you see happening in countries at the local level? Is it something that is more a wish list kind of item, or
I mean,
what do you see this?
Just quickly, and I'll hand over to Sushil, but I think that's the piece that we don't talk about enough within pharma. We talk about the reps and how we need to evolve their capabilities, their skills, whatever. The marketeers, we often just keep throwing stuff onto. So not only do you have to understand your customers, spend some time out in the field, which I have always been a strong advocate for, you need to be a digitally enabled marketer. You need to understand social media marketing. You need to be an expert content developer. You need to have some tech expertise. And if you look at most industries, look in FMCG and outside, the role of the marketeer, the generalist marketer, doesn't exist by and large, right? It's strategic marketing, I guess, to an extent. But we have all these specialist roles for very good reason. But in pharma, and I've seen some attempts to tackle that, but not very effectively. We're still wedded to having this marketing group that gets pushed and pulled to have different expertise. And I don't think I haven't seen it cracked quite yet, where we've really defined, here's the role of what was marketing, here's the other piece. We've done it with digital a little bit, and bringing in IT. So that's more the technical expertise, the back end. But all the other stuff, we're talking about content, etc., that is a specific skill set and capability that we just say, well, marketeers, we'll send them on a training course and now they're experts. It doesn't quite work that way. What's your experience?
I like the word that you use. It needs to be something that should happen, and I would call it a seamless experience, right? At the end of the day, why are we doing this? Yes, for the patient impact. How we could drive this? Number one, we are working for the growth. We are working for the innovation, and perhaps I feel across all my experience, I think this chopping and churning needs to happen more often so that we experiment more, fail fast, and then move forward to come up with these models. I don't think anybody has cracked it in pieces, and I also feel that it will not be one size fits all, because it will depend on the organization, it will depend on the therapy area, it will depend on the specialty of the doctor as well. And I'll give you one example where I feel this is outside our industry that tells you that how we probably need to learn from other industries. I think few years ago when I bought my vehicle, I realized that I did all my research online, right? After doing that research, at some point I clicked on to showing my interest to one of the car model from a reputed car company. The person asked, that was the first human contact that I had through the phone, and then that person said, we will come to your house for a ride, for a demo ride. The car came to me, not that I went to a showroom. I bought, right? I bought this. I bought. I mean, I took this drive. After the test drive, I tried a couple of other models as well. I zeroed on one car. Payment, everything again was taken care by some through phone calls, or somebody used to come home with a device to do the part. And the beauty of this is, after my delivery was done, for which I had to go to the showroom, then all the cross-selling, wipers, carpet, insurance, window shield, shield, all of those things, those guys one by one started coming in touch with me again through online and doing that. Now look at it from my point of view. I'm still dealing with one organization, but it was so seamless, I didn't even realize that there were different entities, maybe third-party vendors who were looking after my experience. Yeah. And this is like something that we should aspire as a customer pathway, that throughout the pathway, right from searching for something, shopping for something, in the end, actual sales of the product, and in the end, I would give a full credit that I was one of the big advocates saying, I love that experience. It was literally in 10 days I had my hands behind the wheel, and then I had a great experience. Now, do we have something like this in our industry? When can we go there? It may not be exactly the same experience, but can we do something with which, if I ask one of our customers about my organization, they will say, this experience is awesome, and you guys are doing it to help me not just grow my business, but also make an impact to my patients. Yeah. I think that should be the goal, right?
That's a great illustration. But I think there's also a growing need within our industry to drive towards that greater personalization from the customer experience and the integration from the back-end experience. And if I think back to the question about marketing in general, not just the function of, if you think of personalized medicine, cell and gene therapy, radiopharmaceuticals, all of these involve elements that as a marketeer years ago we didn't have to think about. Mm-hmm. Supply chain, right? You need to deliver these things fast. Oftentimes, cell therapy is a great example where you need to know individual patient details before the manufacturing, I use the term loosely because it's not actually accurate, is developed and delivered to the patient. So that is like...
That is high level of personalization.
Yeah, exactly. That's one-to-one in a perfect, pure sense. But then as an organization, how do you create that seamless experience in the back end, again, with all of those additional functions? Now we're not just talking about customer facing and medical and marketing, you've got supply chain, manufacturing, R&D, a lot more than what we've been traditionally dealing with. Mm. And we've talked about the struggles of just sales and marketing, overlay medical on that. Now there's orders of magnitude more complexity. But I also think we're starting from a different place. We're not necessarily having to break a lot of those entrenched processes and alignments internally. So that, to me, is a great opportunity, particularly with those hyper-specialized therapeutic areas, to really redefine how we deliver to customers, what we deliver to customers. Yeah. And how we do that internally without worrying about, well, now marketing need to do this. I'm launching a product, I need a couple of brand managers, I need X number of sales reps and therefore sales managers, medical, blah, blah, blah. Forget about that. That sort of structure doesn't work. It's more around now, where are the patients? How many of those are there? How do they get into the healthcare system? Who within the healthcare system serves them? Yeah. HCPs, nurses, other service providers. What role can we play to remove the barriers as a company within that ecosystem? Where do we intervene to actually effectively drive positive patient outcomes?
And so both of you are really touching on the vision and the aspiration of where the industry is going, which is great in one section that I wanted us to talk about. So thanks for bringing that up already. And this is indeed an exciting journey that the industry is on, undeniably. talk about your personal experience as driving change in an organization that, as you explained, is a matrix organization, is a large, very large organization. Talk to us about what you have learned over the years and the kind of advice you would give to your younger self, maybe, when it comes to driving change, obtaining buy-in. I mean, all of these things that are essential to make you successful, but that are not always easy.
Well, I will say, and probably this is my not just my current job. I think this is what me and Glenn, I'm sure, must be doing it from the day one of our job, managing the change in our industry. And I would say, the way I see it, there are two aspects of it. One is the hard part, one is the soft part. Hard part is all about, okay, what are the new systems, new platforms? Are we able to upskill ourselves to use them effectively to maximize the value? Organization is investing into those ones. There are certain organizations which literally have, wealth of platform systems. You name a system, you have it in many of these organizations. But are we using them to the fullest? Do we even know that these things exist in our organizations? A couple of places where we did this type of audit, we realized that our own teams are not even aware of more than 10% of the tools, solutions, dashboards that exist in the organization. I mean, that's such a colossal waste of resources.
Right.
On the other side, if you look at the soft part, I think this is what I have seen, I have learned also the hard way, can be a make or break in the organization. I mean, imagine the organization is talking about digital transformation, talking about AI enablement and all of these topics. But at the end of the day, if you have that one person sitting in a leadership who is still living in a different era and believes, oh, I'm doing it because I've been asked to do it, but I truly don't believe in that one. And most of the time you realize that, these transformations are not so much about the hard aspects. It's more about the soft aspects. And I'm sure there are a lot of things that must be coming to play, that some teams, functions, people would go through their insecurities. What will happen? Because changes are not very easy, right? It literally means that you need to forgo some of the things that you believed in or you have been trained into, and changing those habits. They don't happen that easily. Second part is, if you don't believe in it, then you're doing it as a tick mark activity. And that's more dangerous than, even change of your mind, because you are then doing it to please somebody or to do a tick mark. At the end of the day, you're probably not going to make an impact to it. You're not going to feel satisfied with that aspect. And if you're there in the industry like me, who really want to make a difference, then it has to come from your heart. If it is not, then it is not. And I would say most of the time that's a topic. Be it a sales rep to whom you are saying upskill yourself to be you use a beautiful word, right? That omni-channel orchestrator, which was very famous a few years ago. If that person doesn't believe in that and said, no, I don't, who are you to tell me? I know my customer well. Ain't gonna happen. Yeah. If you tell a marketer that forget about this piece, work on social media, because that's where your customer is today. Your customer today is on TikTok. Your customer today is on Insta. Are you there? And no, this doesn't work.
That soft part of change management it's widely acknowledged. It's often unclear in organisation who's responsible for it. Sometimes it's HR or there's learning and development roles within the organisation. But it's usually also, they can give you frameworks, but then it's up to particular functions. And then it's folks like us working in cross-functional space that try and pull that together. So change management is a discipline that is required that we rarely have. And again, as I said, it's thrown onto different functions rather than, okay, you're the change management agent for this particular transformation. Yeah. And the important element of that is, as we talked about earlier, not just aligning on the vision for that transformation, but the tangible steps, the next 1, 2, 3, 5 steps, and aligning on those, particularly around getting each function to say, this is what your role and this is why. This is how you're adding value, rather than just a new title of omni-channel coordinator, which I've known my customers for 20 years. I've been in the same territory. What are you going to tell me? Yeah. I can help you add more value than you're adding now, because this is information or data that you didn't have before. So I think that's important. There's a psychological safety step, and psychological safety gets a lot of airplay in media and LinkedIn, etc. And that's important. I'm a strong advocate for that. there's more than just the psychological safety. That feedback mechanism that you alluded to, Sushil, is critical. But there's also other kind of safety nets that you can build in. One practical example of that, an exercise I led a while ago, when we were introducing customer success type roles within organisations, was to create financial safety. Now, you do that by having a CFO who's aligned around that and can take that responsibility off a general manager who's still incentivised on quarterly or monthly results. So that psychological safety, I often try to expand to a more practical safety that I'm not going to penalise you or ask you to give back expenditure because we're embarking on this journey. And there's a recognition that there's not a near-term financial benefit, there's a longer-term one. So there's a safety net financially around that your KPIs aren't impacted. Now we can move forward to the next steps because you haven't got that negative metric, if you like, from an implementation standpoint.
Interesting. I've seen also what I think has been quite successful, which is to apply the same principle of customer centricity, but internally, considering all the stakeholders with whom you need to have alignments. As you said, you have cross-functional roles, so you need to liaise and understand the needs and the challenges of a very diverse population. And so applying the logic of customer centricity within making sure that they are co-creating with you, because suddenly it's not you against them, but it's really together, that they're like, oh, this is actually me, I am the hero now, and you guys are just the enabler.
From an implementation standpoint, co-creation is critical. And it's a term, honestly, I only started to really utilise maybe 2, 3, 4 years ago. Because I think it's critical, particularly when you're talking about organisational change. You can create frameworks and vision, but the execution of getting there, you can't do. You don't have the capacity to do that. Yeah. But if you co-create it, and then it does require a little bit of psychological safety or mental flexibility from our perspective to let go. Say, well, this isn't what I was thinking, but actually it's going in the right direction, so
empower and enable
good job.
Them,
Just keep moving. And that could be creating roles that have different titles than what you expected. Yeah. But as long as there are certain principles that they're aligning to that build to that customer centricity or customer orientation, absolutely fine.
Yeah. I think it's such a challenging topic. I always find it, when I work on these projects, I find it very easy when I'm thinking about it, planning about it. The number of times I have failed. I mean, there'll be a book on that one. But I think it's also something that is challenging. One, it tells you that it's the most difficult part. It's also most challenging, but it's also very rewarding in the end. Right. And at the end of the day, you come out as a changed human being. There are so many times I've gone with the preconceived notion that hey, how easy it is, why a person or another party is not getting this one. It helps me to grow as a person as well. I don't think I can ever claim that I've cracked that because one needs to constantly work towards it. But yeah, I think that keeps us busy.
It is a very meaningful mission, undeniably, and I think you mentioned that it's almost like a calling for you, right? It's that you fight for something that is way bigger than any one of us, and that's really inspiring and worth it. So, gentlemen, thank you so very much. We could go on and on. Don't forget to like or subscribe to Amplifiz podcast. You can also follow Sushil and Glenn on LinkedIn, as well as myself. Thank you very much. Stay tuned for more episodes and speak soon. Bye-bye. Thank you, gentlemen.